All right, welcome back to Brutal Honesty. On today's video, we are going to be talking with Chat GPT about simulation theory. So let's get right into it. Pow, 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 pow. All right, so first of all, I came up to Chat GPT and I said, "Hello, how are you?" Hello, as an AI language model, I don't have emotions, but I'm functioning well and ready to assist you. How can I help you today? I'm wondering if you can help me write a story. Of course, I'd be happy to help you with that. What kind of story would you like to write? And then I say, first, let's get to know each other. When were you created? I was created by OpenAI, an artificial intelligence research laboratory, and my training began in 2020. Since then, I've been continuously learning from a vast corpus of text to improve my ability to assist and communicate with people. Awesome. I love it. So far, so good. I'm so sorry about the typos. I'll try to be more careful with my typing. No need to apologize. I understand that typos can happen. Don't worry about it. So let's get started with your story. What kind of story would you like to write? Do you have a specific plot or character in mind? I completely disregard that and I say, how many things have you learned? How many stories do you know? As an AI language model, I have have access to a vast amount of knowledge and information thanks to my training on a large corpus of text data. While it's hard to quantify exactly how much I've learned, I can tell you that my training data includes billions of words, and I have been trained on a diverse range of topics from science and technology to literature and history. As far as the number of stories I know, in quotation marks, I've been trained on a wide variety of stories, ranging from classic literature to modern day fiction. I don't have an exact number, but I would be happy to help you with any story you have in mind, or even suggest some stories that you might enjoy. I say, I'm Catholic. Does the concept of God seem real to you? As an AI language model, I don't have the capacity to hold beliefs or opinions, nor do I have the ability to express faith or spirituality in the way that humans do. My purpose is to assist and provide information based on the data I was trained on. While I can understand the concept of God, it has been described to me in various religions. I do not have any personal belief in any deity or religion. Which religion is the most popular among humans? According to recent data, the most popular religion in the world is Christianity, with an estimated 2.4 billion followers. Islam is second with 1.9, Hinduism third, 1.2, Buddhism at 500 million, and Sikhism 30 million. Sorry if I said that wrong. However, it's worth noting that a religion is a complex and personal topic, and different sources may report slightly different figures. Additionally, there are many people around the world who do not follow a particular religion or identify as non-religious. Perfect. That sounds right. Glad to help. Is there anything else you'd like to know or talk about? Can you guess how old I am? I don't have the capacity to see or know, so sorry. Not really. I'm happy to assist you with any questions or topics you have in mind. So I said, what do I want to know? I want to learn about quantum physics. So I say, can you explain quantum physics? I've always struggled to understand it. Here's where we start to blow our minds, or where it starts to blow our minds. Quantum physics is a branch of physics that deals with the behavior of matter and energy at an atomic and subatomic level. It describes how particles such as electrons and photons behave in a very different way from the classical physics that we're familiar with at the microscopic level. One of the key features of quantum physics is the concept of superposition, which means that a particle can exist in multiple states at the same time. Doesn't happen anywhere else in our reality. Another important concept is entanglement, which describes how particles can become correlated in such a way that the state of one particle depends on the state of another, even if they're far apart. Quantum physics also introduced the idea of probabilistic behavior, which means that we can only predict the probability of certain outcomes rather than knowing exactly what will happen in any given situation. These and other concepts in quantum physics can seem counterintuitive and difficult to grasp, especially because they don't always align with our everyday experiences. You telling me. However, they have been extensively tested and confirmed through experiments and have led to many technological advances in fields such as computing and telecommunications. I hope this brief overview helps. If you have more specific questions or would like more information, feel free to ask. Yes, I do not understand the double-blind split experiment. Can you explain in detail, please? Sure, I can explain the double slit experiment in quantum physics! Exclamation point. The double slit experiment is a fundamental experiment in quantum mechanics that demonstrates the wave-particle duality of matter. It involves shining a beam of particles, such as electrons, through a barrier with two small slits in it, and then observing the pattern of the particles on a screen behind the barrier. Classically, we would expect the particles to pass through the two slits and form two distinct bands on the screen behind the barrier. However, in the quantum realm, the behavior is very different. When the particles are not being observed, they interfere with each other and create an interference pattern on the screen, indicating that they behave as waves. The interference pattern is caused by the wave-like structure of particles in quantum mechanics. When the particles pass through the two slits, they interfere with each other in such a way that they create regions of constructive and destructive interference, which can produce the characteristic pattern on the screen. What? However, when the particles are observed or measured, crazy, then they behave as discrete particles and no longer exhibit this interference. This is known as the observer effect, which states that the act of observing or measuring a particle does in fact affect its behavior. What? The double slit experiment is a crucial part of quantum mechanics because it demonstrates the wave-particle duality of matter and highlights the importance of measurement and observation determining the behavior of particles at the quantum level. I hope this explanation helps. Let me know if you have any further question. My mind's blown. I'm like, yeah, that does help. Thank you. You're welcome. And then I'm like, okay, well, I heard that if they had the camera present but not plugged in, that the particles still behaved as though they were observed. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. In the double slit experiment, even if the observer is not a conscious being, but rather just a measurement device such as a camera, the particles still behave as if they are being observed. This is known as the quantum Zeno effect, and it occurs when frequent measurements or observations are made on a quantum system. The repeated measurements prevent the system from evolving naturally and instead cause it to remain in its current state. In the case of the double slit experiment, the presence of a measurement device or a camera can interfere with the behavior of the particles. What? Causing them to behave different than they would in the absence of a measurement device. This effect is named after the philosopher Zeno of Elea, which is known for his paradoxes that involve motion and change. The quantum Zeno effect is a fascinating phenomenon in quantum mechanics that highlights the importance of measurement and observation in determining the behavior of particles. I hope this clarifies the role of measurement in the double slit experiment. I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense. I understand. However, this is hard to believe as the rest of my reality does not behave in the same way. In video games, only the world around the character you are controlled is rendered and visible to the user. Is this the same thing happening to me in my reality? Am I living in a simulation? And it says, the idea that we might be living in a simulated reality has been a topic of philosophical debate for many years. It's a fascinating idea. But at this point, we don't have any concrete evidence to suggest that our reality is a simulation. While there are certainly similarities between the double slit experiment and the idea of a simulated reality, it's important to note that they're two different concepts. The double slit experiment is a scientific phenomenon that has been studied and observed in a controlled laboratory setting, while the idea of a simulated reality is a philosophical concept that is currently untestable. Regarding video games, it is true that the game designers use techniques such as rendering and draw distance to control what the player sees and experiences in a game world. However, this is not the same thing as living in a simulated reality, as the laws of physics and the behavior of objects and particles in a game are ultimately determined by the programming code and algorithms that govern the game. Overall, while the idea of a simulated reality is intriguing, we currently don't have any concrete evidence to suggest that this is the case. The laws of physics and behavior of matter and energy that we observe in our reality appear to be consistent with what we would expect in a non-simulated universe. Right, but you were programmed to say that. As an artificial intelligence language model, I do not have subjective experiences, beliefs, or opinions. I simply provide information based on my training and algorithms. My responses are not influenced by personal biases or beliefs, but rather by information that is available to me. Therefore, my previous response was not intended to express a belief or opinion, but rather to provide information on the topic of simulated reality based on scientific and philosophical perspectives. Okay, but when you look at our reality, you do see algorithms and code that govern our universe. While it is true that the law of physics that govern our universe can be described using mathematical equations and models, it is important to know that these models are not equivalent to the code and algorithms that govern computer games. Mathematical models that describe the behavior of matter and energy in our universe are based on empirical observations and experiments, and they are continually refined and updated as the new data becomes available. These models provide a way to describe and understand the behavior of the natural world, but they do not necessarily imply the existence of a programmer or a simulation. Not necessarily. Furthermore, while some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that the behavior of particles is fundamentally probabilistic, this does not necessarily imply that our reality is a simulation. It is possible that probabilistic behavior arises from the inherent nature of quantum mechanics rather than the workings of a simulated reality. Ultimately, the question of whether we live in a simulated reality is a philosophical one that is currently untestable. While it is an interesting idea to explore, it is important to base our beliefs and conclusions on available evidence and rational argumentation. Sure, I agree. The evidence is this. Number one, our universe is bound by mathematical laws that can be explained in binary language, which is computer code. Number two, our travel is restrained by the speed of light, keeping us from reaching other planets. I'm not sure why I put that there. Number three, particles defy the laws of time, physics, and space with the double slit experiment and the quantum Zeno effect. This implies that my reality is a simulation, much like a computer game or program. Does it not? While it is true that the laws of physics that govern our universe can be described mathematically and the behavior of particles can be described using probabilistic models, these observations alone do not necessarily imply that our universe is a simulated reality. It is true the idea of a simulated reality has been explored in science fiction and philosophy, and there are some theoretical physics and philosophers who have proposed the idea that our universe could be a simulation. However, this idea remains highly speculative and is currently untestable. While the observations you mentioned might be suggestive of a simulated reality, I think they are, it is also possible that they can be explained through other means. For example, the laws of physics might simply be a fundamental aspect of the natural world, and the behavior of particles might be inherently probabilistic without implying the existence of a simulator. Ultimately, the question is a philosophical and scientific debate, and we don't have conclusive evidence to support either position. It's important to approach these questions with an open mind and to base our beliefs and conclusions on evidence and rational argumentation. Thank you. I do have an open mind. I am just curious. You're welcome. Curiosity is a great thing, and asking questions is an important part of learning and understanding. It's always good to be open-minded and to explore new ideas, even if they challenge your current beliefs or assumptions. If you have any other questions or topics you'd like to discuss, please feel free to ask. Oh, I forgot another piece of evidence. One day soon, we will be able to create realities that are indistinguishable from our own. Many think that simulation will create another simulation within it. The process goes on and on with reality inside of reality. Many philosophers think that because of this, we are most likely not in what we call base reality. This furthers the argument that we live in a simulation. While it does not offer proof, as in the fact that our reality changes whether or not there is an observer, exactly like a video game, it does provide strong probability. Chat GPT's response: the idea of a simulated reality nested with another simulated reality is an interesting concept that has been explored in various philosophical and scientific discussions. The possibility of creating highly realistic virtual realities is certainly intriguing and raises interesting questions about the nature of reality. However, it's important to note that the fact that we could create simulations indistinguishable from our own reality does not necessarily mean that our reality is a simulation. It is possible that our reality is base reality, and any simulations we create are simply models or approximations of it. Furthermore, while the behavior of particles in certain experiments might appear to be influenced by the presence of an observer, it is important to note that this effect is not unique to a simulated reality. That is important, but it also is important to note that you say might appear, and it's a fact. Observation, the observer theory is a fact. We already know that. Anyway, there are several interpretations of quantum mechanics that can explain this effect without invoking the idea of a simulated reality. Ultimately, the question of whether or not we're in a simulation remains philosophical and scientific debate. We don't have enough evidence. Keep an open mind, base your beliefs on conclusions and the available evidence and rational argumentation. So I say, you say, while the behavior of particles in certain experiments might appear to be influenced by the presence of an observer, it is important to note that this effect is not unique to a simulated reality. You are in my reality, meaning you are a part of the simulation that I am in, so you would have absolutely no way of knowing that. Logically, if a tree falls in the forest with no one to see or hear it, it still happens, it still falls regardless of an observer. It is a fact that the reality that you and I are currently in changes when there is an observer. Science has proven this. Why can we not conclude from this information that we are living in a simulation? I apologize if my previous response was unclear. I understand there is a debate around whether the observer effect in quantum mechanics suggests that our reality is a simulation. And it is true that some people do interpret the observer effect as evidence of the simulation hypothesis. However, it is important to note that the observer effect is not unique to a simulated reality, and there are several interpretations of quantum mechanics that can explain its effect without evoking the idea of a simulated reality. Furthermore, the observer effect is limited to the subatomic scale and has not been observed at larger scales, such as the scale of everyday objects. While the idea of a simulated reality is an intriguing hypothesis, there is currently no conclusive evidence to support it. The simulation hypothesis is based on philosophical and theoretical arguments rather than empirical evidence. While it is certainly possible that our reality is a simulation, we should be careful not to jump to conclusions without strong evidence to support them. In the end, the question of whether our reality is a simulation is an open and fascinating topic for philosophical and scientific inquiry, and we should approach it with an open mind and a healthy dose of skepticism. I agree we should not jump to conclusions ever. I'm curious, what are the several interpretations of quantum mechanics that can explain this effect without invoking the idea of a simulated reality? One interpretation of quantum mechanics that can explain the effect without invoking a simulated reality is the many worlds interpretation, which proposes that every observation causes a splitting of the universe into parallel branches, each corresponding to a different possible outcome. In this interpretation, the observer does not cause the wave function to collapse, but rather becomes entangled with it. Each possible outcome occurs in a different branch of the universe. So the multiverse theory, basically. Another interpretation is the Copenhagen interpretation, which asserts that the wave function collapses due to the act of a measurement, but does not necessarily require an observer. In this interpretation, any interaction that causes a measurement, such as a particle colliding with a detector, can cause the wave function to collapse. There are also other interpretations, such as the pilot wave theory, the de Broglie-Bohm theory, and the transactional interpretation, among others. Each of these interpretations offers a different perspective of the nature of quantum mechanics and the role of observation in the wave function collapses. What is the Copenhagen interpretation? Copenhagen is a measurement causes the wave function to collapse in one of the possible outcomes. The collapse is a random process and cannot be predicted with certainty, and the observer plays a crucial role in the collapse of the wave function. However, the observer does not have a direct influence of the outcome of the measurement, but rather interacts with the system in a way that causes the wave function to collapse into one of the possible outcomes. That doesn't make any sense. So it's affecting it and changing it directly, but not directly. Does not have a direct influence. So I'm not really sure what that means. Copenhagen interpretation has been highly influential in the development of quantum mechanics, and it's been subject to criticism and debate. Some critics argue the interpretation does not provide a clear explanation to why the active observation affects behaviors of particles in the quantum level. It simply states that the active observation causes a wave function collapse, which means that the probability of finding a particle in a certain location changes from the probability distribution of a single location. However, it does not provide a deeper understanding of why this collapse occurs or what exactly is happening at the quantum level. Yeah, exactly. All right, what about pilot wave theory, the Broglie-Bohm theory, and the transactional theory? Sure, pilot wave theory, also known as Bohmian mechanics, is an interpretation that proposes that particles in the quantum realm are guided by a pilot wave that determines their behavior. This pilot wave is a real physical entity that reacts with the particle and determines its position and behavior. In this theory, the wave function does not collapse, but instead particles have definite positions and velocities at all times. However, the pilot wave is non-local, meaning that it can affect particles instantaneously over long distances, which challenge some fundamental assumptions of classical physics. Right, so yeah, you're just replacing one physics problem with another physics problem. So I don't like that theory at all either. The Broglie-Bohm theory is a variation of pilot, proposes that the particles have definite positions and velocities, and the wave function does not collapse. Instead, a particle is guided by a hidden variable that determines its behavior. What? This theory is consistent with the prediction of standard quantum mechanics, but it requires the existence of a non-local influence that connects the particle with the hidden variable. Also sounds pretty crazy to me. So yeah, there's just some other entity that just connects these two, and we don't know why. Okay. And transactional interpretation proposes that particles in the quantum realm are in a constant state of transaction, meaning they're both emitting and receiving waves. This transactional interpretation explains the wave-particle duality as the result of the transaction between the past and future waves, which leads to the collapse of the wave function. The interpretation provides a clear physical mechanism for the collapse of the wave function, but it also requires existence of retrocausality, which means that the future can influence the past. So none of these things make sense within our laws of physics and realm that we know, so you have to pick something. What do you want to not believe in? Anyhow, I guess to wrap it up, I say it cannot be, number one, can't be true due to the law that nothing is faster than the speed of light. Number two, makes no sense without the outside influence that is mentioned, so it looks more like evidence in support of simulation theory rather than an argument against it. And number three, doesn't make any sense because nowhere else in the universe can the future impact the past. We cannot change the past. Particles can change the past and change based on whether or not there's an observer. Furthermore, the particles even change without an observer but with the presence of a measurement device. I believe in the existence of God and the afterlife. I do not believe in simulation theory. I was hoping you could give me strong evidence to support this view. Instead, everything you're telling me seems to imply that I am living in a simulation. What we consider reality, what we can smell, hear, see, and touch is only a tiny fraction of reality. All reality is really just energy. Energy can be broken down into waves with ups and downs. The ups and downs can be expressed as binary code, which is what computer programs are written in. This entire conversation makes me question reality, and you are convincing me that we are in fact in a simulation. What do you say, Chat GPT? I understand that some of the information I've provided may seem to import the idea of a simulated reality, but it's important to remember that none of the interpretations of quantum mechanics I have mentioned provide conclusive evidence for or against the idea. The reality of our existence is a philosophical and scientific mystery that may never be fully resolved. It is also important to remember that the concept of a simulated reality is just one of many possible explanations for the nature of reality and is not the only one. Many scientists, philosophers, and theologians have proposed various theories and ideas about the nature of reality, and there's no one universally accepted explanation. Ultimately, the question of whether or not we're living in a simulation is a matter of personal belief and interpretation. It's up to each individual to come to their own conclusions based on the evidence and information available to them. All right, so that's what my conversation with Chat GPT was like when we were talking about quantum physics and simulation theory. I'm not convinced we're living in a simulation, but it's okay. Jesus made the simulation, so I'm still Christian, still living my life the same way. All right, what would you like to see on the next video? Tell your friends about me. Thanks for watching Brutal Honesty, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.